back to Hawk Talk here on 91.7 The Edge, WSUW Whitewater, as well as live streamed on UWW-TV on YouTube. I am your host, Drew Best. I'm back with our latest week of Hawk Talk. I'm joined by the same esteemed crew as I am every Monday. Sam Strash, Nolan Copy. Man, this has been a really interesting week in sports. Really an unfortunate one for a lot of people who are fans of Wisconsin teams, that's for sure.
Yeah, I wasn't the happiest going to bed Sunday night, to put it lightly. But, it is what it is. Any team can beat any other team on any given day. We've seen it in baseball right now with the Phillies making a miraculous run all the way to the World Series. We've honestly been blessed as Wisconsin sports fans with the amount of success we've had in recent years. So, it's been a long time coming. It's time to just bite the bullet and deal with it.
And, we got some practice with this. Remember back to, 2017, 2018 when Rodgers was hurt. Well, 2018 when Rodgers just kind of sucked, but that was also Mike McCarthy. But, yeah, we have some experience missing the playoffs at least a couple times. But it certainly doesn't make this year any easier with just how disappointing they've been.
Yeah, and especially including the Packers loss, you got to also think about the Whitewater loss from this weekend. We'll get into that shortly. But first, we're going to talk about our Warhawk thought for this beautiful Monday. And for this week, it's all about celebrations. So I wanted to ask you guys what your touchdown celebration would be, either by yourself or with a group. I have one of both. So if you guys have one of both, I'm all for it.
So for my individual celebration, I played football even in high school, and I didn't really have one. I would say the Antonio Brown one was just iconic, where he just ran and jumped into the pole for the I'm blanking on the name right now, the field goal post. And so I think that one would be pretty iconic. Of course, the Gritty, which has become very very iconic, especially Mike Gesicki's version. I think that one's definitely been the best.
I think my favorite is Sam Matheny's version from last spring on Hawk Talk.
Yeah,
so.
Right.
Gotta love the skedaddle. Actually, my little brother took video of my dad doing the Gritty. I forgot when it happened, but I can show you guys after the show. It's one of the funniest things I've seen. My little brother sitting on the couch, my dad just looking at the camera like, "Are you ready, Max? Are you ready? Are you ready?" And my little brother's like, "Yeah." And he goes, and it's just the funniest thing. It actually kind of looked okay. I'll give Dave some credit. Dave, you actually did a decent Gritty. All right. My individual touchdown celebration, I was always a fan of the Tony Gonzalez yam over the field goal post with the football. And if I could ever jump 5 feet into the air to be able to do that, that's what I would do.
Man, Tony Gonzalez is one of my favorite players of all time, and obviously they've kind of taken away, interfering with the goalpost. Even the Antonio Brown one got penalized. It's kind of yeah. There's a lot of fun that you used to be able to have with your celebrations, but now everything's a little too much for some people. So it's really unfortunate. That's why the Gritty, I think, has become so popular, because it doesn't really interfere with anything. So I think that I'll do mine for the camera. Why not? So I think I enter the end zone. I flip the ball forward, and I get up. Make sure I'm in frame.
Dusting off the toes.
Ooh.
Dusting off the toes. A little too quick for you guys. Sorry. So just have to dust those off. Make sure there's no more fire under my cleats. So.
Mm-hmm. First, I thought you were doing the ooh kill.
Ooh, kill.
It's a variation of that, I think. And then for a group one, I've always wanted to do the bowling, where I grab the shortest guy in the team and said, "Hey, start rolling towards those linemen right now," and then they just all get knocked down. I think that would be hilarious.
That is a very good one too. I know one of my favorite ones that I did was when I scored a touchdown one time. I had the entire team come over, and it was just this was years back, so this is kind of an outdated celebration now, but it was just where we all were when dabbing was a huge thing, but it was just we all got in the end zone, all 11 of us in the end zone, and we're just yeah, as loud as possible. So at the time it was pretty dirty. Now it's a little cringy if you did it.
I've always been in favor of bringing back the dab. I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I will just ask my friends. I've pledged many times to bring back the dab.
I think the dab kind of died with Cam Newton's football career, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be opposed to bringing it back either. I think it's kind of funny.
It was iconic.
It's a little bit of nostalgia at this point now, which is sad to say because it makes me feel old. But Drew, you kind of stole my my group touchdown celebration, the bowling one, coming from the guy on the bowling team.
Yeah.
Like it would only make sense. But I think I'm gonna have to one up you here with the Prince Fielder walk-off home run against the Giants back in '09, where he jumps on home plate. And then everyone's just gone. Everyone's falling down, and he just stands there and just, opens himself up to the crowd. And then, he's swinging around the jersey after, and everyone's hyped up, and then they end up going 69-93. So
one of the best celebrations that I saw in my young life, especially with the Brewers, Prince Fielder was a star, and man, I wish he would have had a longer career. Injuries kind of derailed it. I think he was on Hall of Fame pace.
He was. Second best Wisconsin sports celebration besides the Aaron Rodgers belt, of course.
I would even throw the Raji celebration in there. I love the Raji.
That one's good too.
That should be my touchdown celebration. I should have said that. I used to be really good at it. Just ask my parents. But anyways, we're going to hop into our first topic of the day. Someone who wasn't doing a lot of touchdown celebrations, unfortunately, this weekend was the Warhawks. They got axed this weekend by the Platteville Pioneers. That makes 4 teams in the WEAC that are 3-1 in conference play now. Usually about 2 or 3 maybe make the playoffs. The Warhawks, for the first time in a while, are in a position where if they lose one more game, they probably won't see playoff time. So it's a young season, 2 losses already, though. What are some positives that we can pull from this game, even in a loss?
Some positives were that they were still able to move the ball relatively well. You had 181 yards passing. Jalen Edmondson and Tamir Thomas both did their thing. Both had over nearly 60 yards. Tamir Thomas was 1 yard short. Jalen Edmondson got over the mark. So 123 yards rushing total as a group. You still had all your receivers doing a lot of contributions. And your defense was also very good. You only gave up 17 to Platteville, and 17 usually for a defense is not like a bad number. It kind of depends on who you're playing and stuff like that. But giving up 17, nothing to scoff at. And Ryan Liska had himself a game. He had 1.5 sacks and 11 tackles, and there were other people who contributed as well. But it was definitely more on the defensive and special team side because I know they also had a very good punting game. But ultimately, what it came down to was Whitewater and their turnovers. You're not going to win many games when you're losing the turnover battle 6-1.
That's true. I kind of wanted to bring that up. 4 interceptions out of Lewandowski this week is definitely not ideal by any stretch. And like you said, Nolan, you're not going to win a lot of games, if any at all, when your starting quarterback throws 4 interceptions and his longest pass play is for 29 yards. The defense, though, is definitely the bright spot here. There's 3 sacks registered, quite a few tackles for loss. There's a fumble recovery by Kyle Koblinger. I want to say that was early on in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. He had Ryan Liska, 11 total tackles. Koblinger had himself a good game, too, with that fumble recovery. I think the defense is stellar. And we've kind of addressed that already for much of the year. They haven't given up, outside of the game against Eau Claire, against La Crosse, my apologies, we've only given up more than 20 points in a game twice. And the Eau Claire game was 30. That was a really close game all around, offensive shootout 34-31, or La Crosse. I'm looking at the wrong game here. La Crosse 34-31. The computer monitor is just not really working for me today. But, it's not the end of the world by any stretch, but there's definitely a cause for concern when the offense has scored 30 points combined over the last 2 weeks, and it's in conference play. Platteville wasn't ranked coming into this week, and they came in and stepped on our throats and wouldn't let off. It's definitely a cause for concern, especially because we're going against a ranked opponent this week in River Falls, who, if I'm not mistaken, is also 5-2.
Also 3-1 in the WEAC.
3-1 in the WEAC as well. The top of the WEAC is very, very tight, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens these next few weeks, especially coming off of 2 relatively weak games on offense.
And you got to think about River Falls and Whitewater seem to be like in the exact same situation. Like you just talked about how they're both 5-2, both 3-1 in conference, both just lost to Platteville. River Falls lost to Platteville 2 weeks ago before they played Whitewater. So Platteville's had a very good stretch the past couple weeks here, and I know River Falls just took it to Eau Claire. They won 63-6 in a huge rout, but they also just barely beat Oshkosh, who I know we limited to 3 points. They beat them 27-24. And they've had other games. They lost to St. John's in Minnesota. So I think that this River Falls game is really going to be the big one left in this season. You do have Stout, you do have Stevens Point, but Stout's sitting at 2-2 in conference. Stevens Point sitting at 0-4, 1-6 on the season. Those aren't great teams. You can't look past them by any means. But this River Falls game, I feel like, really could end up deciding just their playoff futures if they're going to get a home playoff game. I don't want to say that I don't want to say that there's no chance they miss the playoffs. I think it's very slim, if any. But right now, you're talking about home, going on the road the entire time, which you haven't played very good so far this season on the road if you're Whitewater. So it'll be interesting for sure to see how they do the rest of the way.
Yeah, it's very difficult to lose at the Perk, as we've shown this year. We got a big win earlier in the year against Mary Hardin Baylor. At the time, was the #1 team in the nation. It's homecoming week as well, so you would have to expect that they're trying to put on for the fans once again. It seems like we've had a lot of really fun home games this year, with Family Fest obviously being the last one. That was a huge turnout. Mary Hardin Baylor was a huge turnout. Homecoming this week. Senior day for the final home game, there's just always going to be a reason for them to show out. And, I mean, looking at Inside Warhawk football today when I got to talk to Coach Bullis, he remained positive about the weekend as well. He was talking about a lot of players having some of the best games of their career. It just kind of came down to silly mistakes. A couple of penalties on some special teams stuff ended up being an issue. Just decision making. Sometimes it just doesn't go in your favor. And for the Warhawks, that seemed to be the case. But with that, we got to kind of start thinking about the future and what the Warhawks need to do in order to carry on through the season. Sam, what would you say is the most important thing to figure out at this point?
I would say, this is where we get kind of into the non-tangible, non-quantifiable metrics here. Especially on offense, we got to get out of our heads. Turnovers can't become consistent drives now. And that's what happened on Saturday. One turnover turns into a turnover on downs, turns into another punt. It was a punt fest all around. And throwing interceptions cannot continue to turn into throwing more, cannot turn into deficiency on offense, not really producing anything with the ball. We barely cracked 300 total yards against Platteville, who hasn't been the greatest up until now this entire year. Whatever they're putting in the water at Platteville, I guess it's turning them into a great team, and it's turning us worse. But here's the deal. It's time to get out of our head. And remember that we are one of the top programs in the country. We're still top 10 in Division III football. Out of the top 25, we're still 10th. We haven't, as far as my memory goes back, I don't remember us being outside of the top 10, at least since I've been going to school here. So we got to still remember, we are still a great football program. We have a ridiculously good defense. We can't just rely on the defense to start picking up for the offense's mistakes.
And I'm going to go to the fact that they just haven't been able to put points on the board as well. The offensive side, we have gained plenty of yards. You look at the total offense, the average per game, we're averaging over 100 yards more per game than our opponent is as far as yardage goes. But yet you look at the red zone attempts, we're 24 for 36, 18 for 36 on touchdowns. That's, you're only, getting in the end zone half of the time. That's not great. That's something we didn't see a ton last year when they had the super high power offense when they were averaging 40 a game. We're only averaging 5 more points a game than our opponents right now. And it's really boiled down to just not being able to finish off drives, I think, and we are moving the ball well. We did it against Oshkosh really well, but we just weren't able to put the ball in the end zone, more than a couple times. I think Whitewater's biggest thing is that this needs to be taken as a positive, because I'm glad Coach Bullis is looking at it that way, because this can be like a wake-up call. Perhaps you just kind of got ahead of yourself and you're like, okay, well, now we've taken care of Oshkosh. We only got River Falls left. It was very easy to look ahead, to River Falls and say this is our last tough game of the season here. Platteville is no good. I mean, we all kind of admitted it. We were not thinking Whitewater had any chance of losing to Platteville in this one. And so maybe it serves as a wake-up call. And, it's like you need to take all these teams seriously. You need to close out the regular season before you start focusing on stuff like the playoffs or even tougher teams like UW River Falls. But whatever the case may be, I think the biggest issue is just the fact that we need to put the ball in the end zone more. And as far as how to do that, that is obviously a much more complicated response, and that's why some of the coaches get the big bucks. But there's certainly a lot to figure out on the offensive side before they get into the playoffs.
Yeah, well, when you think about that, if we're not scoring points against a team like River Falls, who's ranked in first in multiple respects in the WIAC and a lot of offensive categories, you're going to have to be able to put up points to match that. And if you can't do that, that's another game that we're going to start having issues with. So from a defensive standpoint, how do you shut down that River Falls offense?
River Falls is, like you said, a team that does have leads a lot of categories in offense. The defense, I think, has been doing a fantastic job on the ground like they did last year. Last year, they were just fantastic against the rush. This year, pretty much the same. I mean, you look at the average number of yards per game that they give up, and it's 70 yards per game. That's pretty low for a category. But as far as the passing defense goes, it hasn't been as spectacular as it was last year. They're averaging, over 206 yards, their opponents are. And I think that that's just what they're going to have to improve on. They're going to have to kind of force River Falls to, try and put it on the ground more and just overall restrict their passing game. Because if they do that, I think that they can easily have a formula to win. But they just haven't been able to, formulate that into some success. Their defense has been spectacular. But against River Falls, against a high-powered offense, it could be completely different. So they really just need to focus, I think, on the passing game.
I would have to agree with you there. Running the ball has been our strong suit all year, and stopping the run has been River Falls' strong suit all year. I really think that in order to get around this team, you really have to try and use the passing attack more. And whether or not we're going to be able to finish out drives by passing the ball, I mean, there's only one way to find out, and that's to watch it happen. But I think that's what's got to happen here, because the running game isn't going to do much when River Falls has only given up 670 rush yards all season compared to the 2,000 that they've run.
And you got to look at, too, River Falls is number one in total offensive yards for passing, number one in total number two, in the WIAC in total passing touchdowns. So this is, again, another high-powered offensive team with a really good quarterback. But we have seen games, Oshkosh, Mary Hardin Baylor, where they have been able to shut down really good quarterbacks. Kobe Berghammer didn't have a huge game against Oshkosh. Now, the weather obviously was cold, and it was pretty windy there, and neither quarterback really had a great game. But also against Kyle King earlier this season, against Mary Hardin Baylor. They were really able to shut them both down. But, again, you have to go into every single situation, every single game, and just kind of reevaluate. And I think that that's what they're doing. And I think that this loss really helps them kind of, okay, it's time to get back into playoff mode. Because we were in playoff mode for the entire first start of the season. We had so many tough games. You talk about St. John's, Mary Hardin Baylor, La Crosse. I mean, you're facing three top 10 teams in your first 4 weeks of the season. And now, you maybe start to slack off a little bit. These are teams that you don't really view as tougher. But again, it'll help them snap back into it and really take a look at themselves and their passing defense for this game where they're going to have to be elite.
Yeah, well, the Whitewater teams have always been proven that they can bounce back in great fashion. Coach Boas is really good at reevaluating, getting messages across to his team. The communication's always really been there, so we're just going to have to see if it all pays off. But until then, we're going to switch gears here to a segment called For Real or Unreal. This is looking at some of the early NBA season stuff. It's basically an overreaction, underreaction show. We're going to see if you guys think any of these 5 topics are legit. We're going to start with the first one. The Utah Jazz, they've had a really good start to the season. They've been winning a lot of gritty games. They're a team that looked like they were selling early on. They looked like a team who was trying to get in on the Wembanyama sweepstakes. But, I mean, right now it's looking like they're trying to make a push. Jordan Clarkson is having a great start to the season. So, do you guys think that they're still a playoff team?
I don't know. It's really tough to tell, especially this early in the year in an 82-game stretch. It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint in the NBA. But right now, it looks promising, especially when you have guys like Kelly Olynyk averaging 16 points a game, Colin Sexton with 13, and he's got, his assist numbers are a lot lower to start the year than usual, but Jordan Clarkson's been able to pick that back up with nearly 6 assists per game, playing almost a veteran point guard role on this younger team. And Mike Conley as well. He's playing mostly bench minutes. No, game started 3. He should be getting bench minutes for what he's playing, but I think he can provide the same amount of production off the bench. This team definitely needs a couple touch-ups, but for right now, it doesn't look bad in Utah. It does not look bad at all. I would not call them a playoff team just yet, though, because this team does not have a ton of that experience, and they really aren't using... guys like Talon Horton-Tucker has rarely been used. Rudy Gay is kind of having a rejuvenation off the bench this year. Walker Kessler underperforming per what his standards were getting out of the draft. We're just going to have to wait and see how it unfolds. But for right now, I don't call the Utah Jazz a playoff team yet.
I'm going to go all in and call this one for real. I've talked a couple times on this show and on my Wednesday show about how I still have a soft spot for the Jazz. How I'm more pulling for the Cavs, and I'd call them my second team now, but I'm still pulling for the Jazz. And, man, they look fantastic so far. They look fantastic against good teams, too. Look at Lauri Markkanen, just how he has been able to turn himself into a star so far, averaging 24 points per game. And then, of course, you got guys like Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton on your team. I'm really surprised that they haven't Colin Sexton come off the bench. I think he would, like you said, I thought, he would start over Mike Conley and they'd bring Mike Conley off the bench. But, for a bench guy, I guess you do just want that, spark sometimes to get you going. If your offense is kind of in a slump, you're going to want a guy like Colin Sexton, the young bull who went after Nikola Jokic in that game and got the game-winning bucket in overtime over the MVP. You're going to want him off the bench, and he has done just that so far. But, yeah, Lauri Markkanen has been absolutely fantastic. They've beat teams like the Pelicans. They beat in overtime yesterday. That the Pelicans are a really good team. A lot of people had them as kind of an underdog team. They beat the Timberwolves, who I know a lot of people were super high on. The Nuggets, obviously, everybody thought they were going to be a top seed in the West this year. Yes, it's very early in the season. We're only 3 games in. But this is a Utah Jazz team that just looks like they have so much heart. And I know that they're really backed by their fan base. Their fan base has always shown up and been very supportive, always been one of the better ones as far as showing up to games goes in the NBA. And so maybe that's driving it. Maybe, who knows what's driving it. New coach, new, core players, everything. But whatever it is, it's working right now. And I'm going to say, while they won't be a very high playoff team, I could see them being like a play-in team. So I'm going to call this one for real.
I like the juice they're drinking. I'm going to call it for real, too. We're looking at the teams that they beat. Nuggets, Timberwolves, Pelicans. The Nuggets and Timberwolves are the 2 teams I picked to be in the Western Conference Finals last week, if you remember correctly. And before that, beyond that, it's just a gritty team. You look at the 2 overtime wins that they just had against the Timberwolves and the Pelicans. It takes a lot to really just gut those games out down the stretch, especially when you're going up against Zion Williamson, who's a stud. You look at the Timberwolves and I almost called him Anthony Bennett. Anthony Edwards. Anthony Bennett would not be hard to beat. Anthony Edwards got Karl Anthony Towns, Gobert on those teams. And they're just going straight at people. They don't care about names. They're just winning the game. And even if they're trying to trade these pieces and picking up these draft picks, this is already a great base. These draft picks are going to turn them into a dynasty, I think.
Yeah, and maybe this is going to be a stretch when we come back to this, but for some reason, this kind of reminds me of like a We Believe Warriors type vibe to a team where it's just nobody here is really projected to be a superstar. You could make the argument, I would make the argument that their best player on their team is either Colin Sexton or Jordan Clarkson. But if you're a team that has those guys as your best players, you're not expected to do very well. And that was evident by pretty much everybody picking the Utah Jazz to be bottom of the barrel in the conference this season. But you never know. Sometimes you just get the right group of guys together and it clicks. And like you said, with the amount of draft picks that they have, this could be a team that is very, very well set up in the future. I know they definitely were, if you're an executive, maybe you're not the happiest because you were probably trying to tank at this point for Victor. But I don't know. How can you deny how well this team has gelled already in 3 games with, again, Lauri Markkanen just being unbelievable this season, Jordan Clarkson still pitching in his, Kelly Olynyk having, these are all guys who are having like season career years.
And they're all new pieces. Like,
right.
Not pretty much all these guys are getting signed. Like in the offseason, these are guys that were on different teams last year, and they're coming into Utah, a team that looked like it was going to rebuild and going to tank. But they're kind of just like, they're just gritty, and they're just putting their heart on the line, and they're scoring big buckets at the end of the game. If you would have told me that Kelly Olynyk was the guy that they were going to give the ball to with 5 seconds left in overtime, I thought you were crazy. But he made the bucket. They got the win. And sometimes that's all you need. But I'll let Sam get a point in here.
It's still shaky for me to call a team where Kelly Olynyk is the best player on that roster a playoff contender. I just, something in my mind just doesn't click saying that. Like those 2 words, Kelly Olynyk, leading scorer, playoff contender. Those 2 phrases I feel should not be in the same sentence. And it is very early. It is very early in the season, lest we forget. So I just can't call them a playoff team yet. I have to see more. Yes, their next couple of games are they go to Houston, then they go back home against Houston. They had another game against Denver, game against Memphis. I think it's going to get tough after that Houston stretch for them, especially they have Dallas right after Memphis. Then they have the Lakers, who we think could actually be okay. Clippers, then Lakers again. And then the Hawks, who are also, one way or the other team where they're either going to beat anyone on the face of the planet or they're going to lay down and die for anyone on the planet. I think there's a very tough stretch of games coming up for this team. After, what day is that Hawks game? Let's find it again. November 9th. Let's come back November 10th. And if the Jazz are still this good after November 9th, on November 10th, I could see them being considered a playoff team. But right now, it is too early to tell.
It's fair. It's a fair point. Like I said, this is probably just my bias talking, but I want to see this team succeed without Donovan Mitchell and with Rudy Gobert, and they're going to lose to good teams. They're going to, probably lose to the Nuggets again. They're probably going to, take only 1 or, maybe 0 out against the Mavericks. They're going to lose to good teams. They're not going to be top tier, but I could easily see them sneaking in this West, like at the bottom, where you're talking about a Lakers team that has been super disappointing so far to start this season. You talk about, I'm blanking on some teams, but I just know that there's teams that have not been very good, that have been kind of, disappointing in both conferences. So I don't know. It just wouldn't surprise me to see them there. I get saying that it's too early, but for some reason, something in my gut is just telling me this is a team that's going to mesh well together, that has meshed well together already. And they're going to be like, you think about the phrase like Daniel Jones starting quarterback and your team is one of the best in the NFL. Those 2 phrases don't really work out either. But yet here we are with the Giants in the NBA or the NFL. So maybe this is just the year that a lot of crazy stuff happens where all the leagues flip-flop and all the teams that are supposed to be at the bottom are now at the top and vice versa.
Well, Daniel Jones had a great ground game last weekend. That's besides the point, but I would say that there's natural regression that's bound to come with this team. I think that they could be a play-in contender for sure. Next one. The Miami Heat have closed their championship window. How do you guys feel about that?
I don't think it was really ever open, personally. And that really goes back to when the team first traded for Jimmy Butler. I was never really high on the Heat after they traded for Jimmy Butler. They're going to be a very defensive team, and that's what we've seen so far. Outside of Tyler Hero, really, Jimmy Butler has taken 2 threes so far this year. His true field goal percentage right now is about 50%, which is good. It's really good. And he's averaging 22 points per game. Get the ball out of Kyle Lowry's hands, please. If this team wants to be a championship contender, get the ball out of Kyle Lowry's hands. He's taking the most three-point attempts on this team, and only has a 30% three-point percentage. He's only shooting 32% from the field right now, and he's averaging 12 points per game. That's not what you want out of your starting point guard, who's supposed to be a scoring first point guard. That's not what you want as what you see yourself as a championship contender. You don't want that as the guy being the primary ball handler right now. I really don't think, because they've never really been able to close out in the playoffs. They haven't been like, they made it to the championship during the bubble season. Big whoop. I mean, that really was ridiculous circumstances for every single team involved. We all thought the Bucks were just going to rout the entire league on the way to the finals that year. Then COVID comes along, stops the season for 5 months, and the Miami Heat and TJ Warren is all of a sudden the best player in the NBA, and the Miami Heat are unbeatable. And I don't think that really carried over into last year either. I don't think it was there the year before it. They just don't have that it factor. They're not an unbeatable team, and I want to stand by that. I don't think this championship window for them was ever really open.
I'm going to kind of disagree. I will say that it is open, but there would have to be, like, extenuating circumstances. Like, a team like the Celtics or the Bucks would have to, like, suffer an injury to the point where it was almost like the Bucks run in 2021. I know people who are haters like to call the Bucks run a fluke in 2021 because there were so many teams injured and stuff like that. I could see a Miami Heat team that's healthy getting to the championship and winning in those circumstances, because they are a very gritty team. They're another one of those teams that doesn't maybe have the best players, but they got really good players. I mean, you think about Jimmy Butler, his ability to take over games. Tyler Hero, when he wants to pitch in, is really good. Bam Adebayo is a great number 2 scorer. Kyle Lowry has been, not good this year, but he's been serviceable, I guess you could say, ever since game 1, that is. So you got guys on this team who are going to be really good role players, be really good teammates. They have a great chemistry around them, I think. So that can go a long way in the NBA, but if you're facing teams like Milwaukee, Boston, in the playoffs, or if you're, even if they made the finals, if you're facing a team like the Clippers or the Nuggets, I just don't think that they would compete with one of those teams. So I'm going to say that I guess this is for real, as long as, we don't have some major injury apocalypse, kind of like we did in the 2021 playoffs.
I'm going to say it's unreal. For one, it's really weird because Tyler Hero and Jimmy Butler are both people who were near and dear to the Milwaukee community, one being from Marquette, one playing at Marquette, and one being from Whitnall. I think that both of them are overrated. I don't think that Tyler Hero was worth as much money as he's getting paid. I think they're just trying to keep him around because he's their only offensive piece. I think that when you put him up against the Bucks, none of them can guard Giannis. I think if you put him up against the Celtics, you can maybe throw Jimmy Butler on Jason Tatum, but then who's covering Jaylen Brown? You can't take Bam off of Al Horford, so you got to make sure that you don't have the defensive pieces even. It's really strong at the top. You don't have the defensive pieces, though, to guard a team with a lot of depth. You don't have the offense that can keep up. Kyle Lowry, I was a pretty big Raptors fan early on with DeMar DeRozan, that Kyle Lowry team. That's about where he peaked. As soon as DeRozan left, I don't think that Kyle Lowry has looked good ever since then. I don't think he looked good when he was in Houston. I think he had like a 2-year stretch where I thought maybe he was all right. But I'm going to say that the Heat they've closed their championship window. It's over for them.
My question with them, where is Duncan Robinson? Where is he? Because if you really, like we said, get the ball out of Kyle Lowry's hands, get the ball into the hands of Tyler Hero, who's shooting nearly 50% this season already. He's already one-upping his season from last year as we speak. He's number 2 on the team in points scored. Get the ball to Max Strus. Max Strus is really turning into something special off the bench, especially as like a 3-and-D wing player. And Duncan Robinson is supposed to be that same guy too. Where is he? He's got 4 points per game right now. He's playing 10 minutes per game compared to the last 3 years where he had 29 minutes, 31 minutes, 25 minutes, and he was averaging double-digit points per game, shooting 50% from 3. Where is Duncan Robinson? If you want to win a championship, get this man the ball. I don't know what is going on.
He's just been unseen, I think, and I would love to dig deeper into the Heat, but we got to get some more hot takes in here. Do you guys think that DeJounte Murray was the best pickup of the offseason?
No. I think that the best pickup of the offseason was 100% Donovan Mitchell for the Cleveland Cavaliers, with how much he's already affected their team and how much I think he's going to grow into the number one role there, despite my personal feelings saying that Donovan Mitchell is, as big of a fan of him as I am, he is not going to be a number one on a championship winning team. He has to be the number two option. They got to get another superstar in there. But for the role that he's going to be in Cleveland, and for the jump I expect them to take with all their young players, I think he was definitely the most important one. However, I'm going to give DeJounte Murray his credit. He has been very good with the Hawks this season, and I think that was one of my hot takes. I can't remember if we said it on the show or not, because I know we cut that segment short when we were talking about our NBA predictions, but I thought the Atlanta Hawks were going to be a top 5 team in the East this year. And I'll stand by that. They have a good team, I think, with Trae Young. You talk about DeJounte Murray again. The Atlanta Hawks, they have a lot of good pieces around them, but I just don't think that you could put DeJounte Murray on the same level as Donovan Mitchell as far as importance to a team that they got in the offseason. So I'm going to say this one is unreal.
I think it's real. I've just been looking through some of the offseason moves so far, in terms of trades especially, and I think 3 of the bigger ones that happened over the offseason for sure have to be DeJounte Murray to the Hawks from the Spurs, Malcolm Brogdon from the Pacers to the Celtics, and Jeremy Grant heading to Portland. Malcolm Brogdon has not been the greatest with Boston just yet. He's playing a new role this year in Boston, where he's purely off the bench behind Jaylen Brown. And I think, honestly, that suits him fairly well. It's going to take him a little bit of time to kind of get into that role. But right now, he's not playing up to par. Jeremy Grant has not been playing up to par. But DeJounte Murray is still dropping 20 points per game. It was almost like a seamless transition. Still shooting 46% from the field like he has the last 4 seasons. He's nearly at a career high for three-point percentage, and he's taking the most amount of threes per game than he has in his entire career. His efficient field goal percentage, 50%. Hasn't missed a free throw yet, averaging 3.3 steals per game. That's nuts on defense. It really is nuts. He's playing 40 minutes a game this year. That's a new career high for him, too. He stepped into this new role with the Hawks as you are guy number 2 now behind Trae Young. And Trae Young, his three-point percentage has taken a crap this year. And DeJounte Murray has had to kind of pick up for him, and he's done a phenomenal job at doing that. So I think this one's a real take.
I've been going back and forth with this because obviously Donovan Mitchell has been tremendous on the offensive side of the ball, but I think I'm going to side with Sam on this one. And I don't know why, but I feel like it started with his beef with Paolo Banchero in the offseason. I think that really sparked him, and obviously switching teams. I think that he's just been phenomenal on the offensive side. He's got to pick up a little bit more from that, but he's averaging 19, 7, and 8, which is great for the number 2 option there, obviously. He's on a team that he fits very well. I was very skeptical in the beginning. I didn't think that he would really be that next step for the Hawks, but he's really been filling in where he needs to. He's a very good situational player. He's very, very good on defense, given that it has been against some bad teams. But, you look at the game against the Magic, he shot 50% from the field, 9 rebounds, 9 assists, 4 steals. That's against Paolo Banchero. Well, obviously not guarding him, but that's in a game that they played against each other. He's just kind of had the upper hand. Donovan Mitchell's been tremendous on offense, but I'm still a little bit skeptical about that defense. He's going to have a lot of help with Cleveland in the defensive respect, but I think that overall DeJounte Murray has been more overall big pickup. Obviously, it's only been 3 games, and we got a lot more to see, but I think it's going to be a very more close conversation than we expect.
I would agree with that. I'm not hating on DeJounte Murray or anything by any means, and I think he has been absolutely fantastic, and kind of a 1A, 1B situation in my mind with Donovan Mitchell. But Donovan Mitchell has yet to score under 30 points right now with the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs are doing fantastic right now. And I really expect Donovan Mitchell, again, like you said, he has a lot of help. He won't necessarily need to do as much on the defensive end, I think. I just think that it was a great fit for him in Cleveland as well. With all those young stars around them, they're going to be a very, 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 very good team for a while because they have a good, bright future. And just the stardom that Donovan Mitchell has around him, that's why I would put him just ahead of DeJounte Murray. But like I said, I was very high in the Hawks to start this season. I was very high in the pickup of DeJounte Murray, and I'm very happy to see him doing as well as he is right now.
You know, I think this might be seen as a little bit outlandish. A little bit. You look at the Cleveland Cavaliers roster, who on that team is going to take away the ball from Donovan Mitchell? Nobody.
No.
Nobody. You look at the Hawks. Who's going to take away the ball from DeJounte Murray? You got a couple guys that I think could for sure. In Trae Young and John Collins. You switch Donovan Mitchell and DeJounte Murray. I think DeJounte Murray would do exactly what Donovan Mitchell's been doing in Cleveland if he were in that same context, which is why I think DeJounte Murray has been the best pickup in the offseason, because if you put Donovan Mitchell in Atlanta, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it would, because you have two primary ball handlers at 1 and 2 in Young and Mitchell. And with DeJounte Murray, I mean, he's more of an all-around guy. He doesn't need to have the ball in his hands to be efficient. But when he does have it in his hands, he can be. I think you put him in this context with Cleveland, he's doing the exact same stuff that Mitchell's doing.
I would 100% agree, and I think that's just like the system that they both fell into was fantastic. DeJounte Murray is not going to be a number one for a very competitive team in my mind, but he is a fantastic, fantastic number 2 option. He's a better number 2 option than John Collins. He's a great, second fiddle to Trae Young. Donovan Mitchell would not succeed in that role. They're going to succeed in their roles well. I just think the Cavs go a little further with Donovan Mitchell, and I think Mitchell just maybe contributes a little bit more. We'll see how it goes on throughout the season, but it'll be really interesting to watch. I think that there's, those are by far the 2 biggest pickups this offseason, and then it's just like way, a big gap between everybody else.
We'll have to talk about it again in 79 games, right?
Right, exactly.
All right, so last one. We'll kind of be quick with this one, but it's a very heavy topic. LeBron is no longer a top 12 NBA player. True or false? For real or unreal?
Oh, man. This is just such a tough thing to say.
Do you want me to go first?
Yes.
Why don't you go first, Drew?
I'm going to go for real. As someone who who already said on the show that my sleeper team this year is the Lakers, I think that they have a lot of talent there in combination. They're not very deep, but they have a lot of talent. I don't think that LeBron has been orchestrating that team the way that he should. I think that his leadership is not the only thing that's going to... I think that's the only thing that's going to get him places. I don't think that he's more talented than the following players. KD, Steph Curry, Jokic, Giannis, Luka, Jason Tatum, Joel Embiid, John Morant, James Harden, Devin Booker, Damian Lillard, and Donovan Mitchell.
Man, that is tough because
It is it's very difficult. He's right on the edge. Because I could have said top 10 and been like, oh, easily not top 10. But you start getting to that 11 to 16 range. That's where it gets like foggy. Like LeBron obviously has this amazing legacy that he builds off of. But is he really that big of a talent right now?
Like we were talking about earlier with the Jazz, it is a little early to tell, in my honest opinion. But in terms of advanced statistics here, advanced statistics being, for those who don't know that are listening or watching this at home, anything that involves an average or a ratio. It's not just a ticker statistic where it's like, oh, he got a point, tick, In terms of advanced statistics, this year is arguably his best year in a Lakers uniform, and he's 38. I mean, he's averaging 27.3. Last year, 30 points per game. Yes, this is his second highest total as a Laker thus far. He's shooting the lights out of the ball, 63% from 2. His three-point has taken a step back, but he's still shooting almost 48% from the field. 11 rebounds per game, that's a career high for him. 11 rebounds per game is a career high. Still at about 7 assists per game, averaging almost a block and a half. along with a steal per game, he's not a liability on defense whatsoever. By no means is he a liability. He's still taking a lot of shots, but he's been scoring terrifically. I can't see a world where LeBron is not in the top 10 in the NBA.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Sam on this one. I have always been an advocate for LeBron James is overrated. In every GOAT debate, I'm on Michael Jordan's bandwagon, and I'm saying how, LeBron has had better teammates. He's been bailed out before. This, that, and the other. I could even be categorized as a LeBron James hater at some points in the past. However, I'm going to give him his props, and I've always given him his props, as he is, I think, in my mind, the number 2 best player to ever play in the NBA. And like Sam said, he really hasn't lost a step necessarily this year. His three-point shooting is not good, but he's taking so many three-point shots because the Lakers need him to. I think the Lakers' lack of success is really dependent around the team that they have built around LeBron James and the fact that it's not good. You got day-to-day Davis there. He's your number 2 option. You got a Russell Westbrook who, he got, 19 in game 1, but then when he had 2 points and went 0 for 11, I think, in game 2, was just atrocious. And they have no shooters on that team. Your best shooter on that team is either LeBron James or Patrick Beverley. And
Maybe throw Malik Monk on that list. Very shaky.
Point is, you don't have a good shooter on that team. If that's your best shooter, you're in some trouble here. I don't know what they were thinking when they were building this team, but it's just not built to succeed, and that's why, it's not doing as good. I think people for so long have expected LeBron to just kind of take whatever team he's got on his back and just charge him to the finals, because that's what he did for so long in Cleveland. I mean, he was playing with, nobodies in Cleveland in 2017, 2018, besides Kevin Love.
Even his first stint, too, the team that went to the finals against the Spurs.
Right.
Zydrunas Ilgauskas is your number 2.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's led, nobody teams to the finals before, and I think that's what people kind of expect him to do here. I don't know if he can do that anymore. I definitely think he has lost a step in that regard. But to not even put him in the top 10, much less the top 12, I think is just wrong. I could see maybe 6 or 7 players above him, but just some of the guys off the top of the head that you listed, like Devin Booker, Donovan Mitchell, I think no way are they better.
Especially
than LeBron
Donovan
James.
Mitchell. I
Mitchell was a very questionable one. That was one I went back and forth with. But I mean, I don't think that he's more talented than Jason Tatum right now. Would you guys agree?
I think
no,
so.
I would not agree with that. I think Jason Tatum is just a tad overrated. He is a great scorer, and I don't know. There's just something about him that he, to my eye test, is just not great. Jason Tatum, I think people have been talking about him as a top 5 NBA player in the league, and I just don't see that right now.
What about KD?
KD, yeah. KD for sure, yeah.
Curry?
Yes.
Yep.
Giannis.
Jokic, Giannis?
Yeah. Yep.
Luka?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a more questionable one. Kawhi?
I don't know. I really don't know.
We haven't seen a lot of Kawhi recently, so it's very difficult to tell.
Before his injury, for sure. But yeah, we have no idea right now, especially with him coming off the bench.
Embiid, I say no.
I'm going to say Embiid's better right now, talent-wise.
This is so tough after 2 MVP seasons. I'm still going to say no. I still think LeBron is better than Joel Embiid right now.
Ja Morant. Do you think he's more talented than Ja Morant right now?
I think him and Ja Morant have 2 very, very similar play styles that deliver very, very similar results. And LeBron's been doing it for far longer and is at 38 years old and is still doing the same exact stuff that Ja Morant can at 23, 24.
That one, yeah, I think that would almost be a tie for me. That one is so tough to decide.
Do you think that Ja Morant has the type of trajectory that LeBron had?
No, I don't think he has top 3 player in the league potential necessarily, but he has Hall of Fame potential for sure. And Ja Morant I think is going to lead the Grizzlies for quite a long time, barring anything major happening to him. But
I think he for sure has top 3 potential, but he's playing in a league that has a lot of top 3 players. That's my only issue, which is why I think that Ja would have a slightly different career path or be a little bit under-noticed in this league compared to LeBron, where it was mainly a shell of Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant. And then you had up-and-coming Dwayne Wade. You still had Shaq there. The shell of Charles Barkley. There weren't as many superstars when LeBron first came into the league like there is right now when Ja Morant's in year 2, year 3.
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about Ja Morant as having such a good trajectory, but would you put him, as far as like potential, above a guy like Jokic or Luka or Giannis? No, I wouldn't put him ahead of any of those three players. I always thought Ja Morant was the best in his draft class, which is a separate discussion, I know. Like, I was never high on taking Zion because I thought the risk of injury was so great with Zion, which has obviously panned out a little bit. I love Ja Morant, but I don't know if I would put him ahead of any of those three guys, much less LeBron's trajectory when he came into the league.
Do you think that LeBron's current status in the NBA is similar to Aaron Rodgers' current status in the NFL? In terms of just like being the older player, maybe losing a little bit of a step, but still competing at the highest level?
I think he is at Aaron Rodgers' status back in like 2018. When Rodgers had like a really not good year, but it was still good numbers. He just didn't have a good year. The Packers didn't have a good year. And so he kind of got knocked as, this guy's old, this guy's washed up. And then he came back and had, a couple MVP seasons, the past 2 years. He had a great 2019. I'm not saying LeBron. I don't think LeBron will ever get another MVP. But at the same time, I don't think that he is like some washed up veteran or, he's an older guy. But you could still say he's like I said, I think you could make an argument he's a top 5 player in this league. It would be a very flimsy argument, but you can make that argument. I don't know if you can necessarily make that after this year for Aaron Rodgers right now.
They do have similar career paths and similar things that have happened to them in their careers with injuries and with falling just short of being in the finals or winning the finals, or in Aaron Rodgers' case, really just making the Super Bowl. I think it's fair to call LeBron the NBA's Aaron Rodgers and vice versa, calling Aaron Rodgers the NFL's LeBron James. I just think there's a slight difference between the two, and the difference is that LeBron can take bad teams and turn them into really good ones that will win championships, versus Aaron Rodgers taking some rough-ish teams, making them look very good, but not being able to get over the hump.
Would you say that's his fault, or would you say that's a coach's issue?
For the sake of time, I'm just going to say that's a coach's issue, for the sake of time. Not utilizing players to their strengths.
Most of the time it's the coach's issue. Last year, it was an Aaron Rodgers issue. Like last year against the Niners, it was Aaron Rodgers' fault that they lost that game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, not fully, because I don't think you can ever really fully place blame on one person, but he was a major factor why they lost that game.
Would you guys put LeBron top 6? Like number 6?
In the league right now?
In the league.
I think that's a ceiling.
I mean, like I just said, I think you can make that argument. I don't think it would be a very good argument. And for me, no. For me, you have Giannis, Jokic, Luka, Curry, KD, and I'm going to go ahead and put Kawhi in there because I just think that, we haven't seen his strength yet, but I'm going to judge him based on what he was before his injury right now. And he was, one of the best players in the league. And he looked really good on his rehab. I mean, I don't know if you guys saw, like, how much he worked out in the off season and, like, how big he is now.
He looks jacked.
He is jacked. He is jacked now. So, and we haven't really gotten to see him play fully yet. He's just been coming off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, we'll throw one more in real quick since we got a little bit of time. We can make this one pretty quick. The Memphis Grizzlies are a top 2 team in the West.
No. I'm going to call this one unreal. Like I said, I think it is still my belief that the Memphis Grizzlies are going to be kind of a playing team this year. They have looked really good, but they've also looked, not so good. Who was it that they faced game 1? It's escaping me right now, but they had a lot of trouble with a team that I thought that they shouldn't have had a ton of trouble with. They did end up getting the win, but
the New York Knicks, 115 to 112.
Yep, and that's I don't know. I just think that they're going to be a very up and down team this year, I could see. And I know that they don't have a lot of their guys right now. You talk about Jaren Jackson being out. But as a top, 2 team, most definitely not. You got the Warriors, you got the Clippers, you got the Nuggets. There's still plenty of great teams in there.
I think with as top-heavy as the Western Conference is, I think it's safe to say that the Grizzlies will be a top 4 team in the West. With having a relatively easy schedule and a very talented roster, I don't see them being top 2, though, mainly because I have the Suns and the Warriors or the Nuggets or the Mavericks being that 2 spot. I don't think Memphis takes that 2 spot. I think they're 3 or 4.
I think they're a 4 or 5, 1 depending on how soon they get Jaren Jackson back, and 2 depending on how Desmond Bane responds, because to this point in the season, he has not looked tremendous through that stretch. But I think that's really what this segment is about, is kind of like taking these first 3 games, kind of overhyping them a little bit, you could say, and then trying to make some results out of it. But obviously there's either 79 or 80 more games for all of these teams, and all these are going to be answered in due time. So as a result of that, we're going to enter our final thoughts. I think that was a pretty good show today. We'll start with Sam. Sam, what's your final thought today?
My final thought is that New York football is back. And it's exciting to see, honestly, because New York sports fans need something to cheer about. I mean, they had a hockey championship a couple years ago, if I'm not mistaken, with the New York Rangers. But baseball is obviously failing in New York, with the Mets getting bounced in the wild card round and the Yankees getting swept by the Houston Astros. The Astros are the only team in baseball history to have knocked out the Yankees 4 times in the playoffs. The Astros have been in the American League since 2013. The Yankees have been in baseball since 1903. So having football be a very big and very successful sport in New York sports again, it's a great thing for the city. Those fans are really passionate. They show out to every game regardless of how good or bad the Jets and the Giants are. The Meadowlands is popping this year. MetLife Stadium is selling out for both teams, which is something you haven't seen in forever. I'm glad that New York football's back. I'm glad that both of those teams are good.
Yeah, Jets haven't made the playoffs since 2010. That was the last time they made the playoffs.
But fumble year.
Was when the year they almost went to go play the Packers in the Super Bowl. They lost in the AFC Championship game to the Steelers that year. But it is refreshing, I guess, to see them back. I've always never been a huge fan of bigger markets, so I never felt too much sympathy for New York fans who are saying, the Yankees haven't made the World Series since 2009. It's like, oh yeah, well the Brewers have made it one time in their entire season, or in their entire history. But yeah, it is very refreshing to see the Giants and Jets and just new teams in general in the NFL, much to my chagrin, though, for the Green Bay Packers. But my final thought is really excited to get back to announcing this week with you, Drew, and with Sam Matheny on UWW-TV. It should be a fun game to look forward to for homecoming. And, just looking forward to watching the Bucs play, because I've lost a lot of hope for Green Bay this season. So just pain.
That's a great transition to what my final thought is. I'm really having an issue with the Packers right now. I think that there's a lot that needs to happen in this offseason. I think that we're set up for maybe a 10-7 season right now. It's not looking too hot. We got a tough schedule coming up. It's going to make a huge difference if they can beat the Bills this weekend. We were talking about it before the show. This is the most Packers thing you can do. You can beat the Bills, get our hopes up, and then we can get back to sucking. So I can foresee that. I'm excited to see some more Bucs play because they've looked spectacular. The first game was a little shaky for me, but second game, a lot of my questions were answered, and Drew Holiday learned how to shoot again. Brooke Lopez is averaging 3.5 blocks a game right now. So that's pretty spectacular. But with that, we're going to wrap up the show. This has been your latest edition of Hawk Talk here on 91.7 The Edge, WSUW Whitewater. From Nolan Copy, Sam Strash, I'm Drew Best. You can tune in Tuesday through Thursday, 5 to 6, where we will continue with this show. But until then, we're going to get back to some alternative hits here on 91.7 The Edge, WSUW Whitewater.